Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. And by the way, it is good morning for Ciarán. I think it's 10 a.m. in Ireland, right?
It is.
Okay. So, and also Millie, it's 10 a.m. So good morning to you. Good afternoon to our participants from Gaza. It's a great pleasure to have you all today. And I know some people are joining us from New Zealand, which is good evening, which is great to have people from different places around the world. This is really fantastic. Um, I'm really honored to welcome you all today to this really important session. And it's an honor to welcome uh, my friend, Dr. Ciarán O'Carroll, who is a lecturer at Technological University Dublin in Ireland. Dr. O'Carroll, he teaches communications and sustainability with a strong focus on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. He's currently leading an exciting partnership between his university and Al-Najah National University in Damascus, which is great effort. I really like it. A bit of not really secret about Ciarán, but I can share with you that he has been to Palestine 15 years ago. He has been to Nablus 15 years ago, which really had an kind of a lasting impact on Ciarán. That's why he's really engaged in collaborating with Palestinian academic community and scholars, supporting them. And was just one example of how he supports students and academics in Gaza and Palestine generally. So I really hope that while we are meeting virtually today, I hope that we sincerely welcome you soon in Gaza when circumstances improve and this crazy war is over. So hopefully we'll meet you in person.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. So leave the floor for you. Today, Ciarán will be talking about a very timely and important topic. He will be talking about AI in academia, what you should and need to know. So over to you, Ciarán.
Thank you very much, Ahmed, for that introduction. And it's so nice to be here amongst friends. And I hope you find this talk interesting. I find when I speak about AI, it brings out a lot of questions. So I like to leave time for questions in these sessions. So I will do my talk, and then I hope that through the chat or through the call that you can ask questions as well. Okay. So let me just begin by saying that in my university and in Western academia, the spread of AI on campus is happening extremely fast. Major AI services such as OpenAI, who run ChatGPT, Google AI, Gemini, and Microsoft AI Copilot are being rolled out very fast in academia, particularly in Western campuses. For example, in my university, one day we did not have AI, and the next day suddenly we all had Microsoft Copilot AI. And the AI companies are running very big campaigns to get academia and universities to move to their AI. And they're also targeting with marketing campaigns students and my students as well to use their tools and chatbots for AI. So I think it's very important that we talk about AI and academia and what this means. What is it, AI in academia, and what is its impact? And I think as well, with the importance of Palestinian education, of course, for Palestinians, you don't need me to tell this to you, is extremely important for Palestinians, a very important part of your self-identity. Literacy rates and education rates are extremely high in Palestine. Graduate degrees are extremely high, and in very complex and important topics such as doctors, law, engineering. You don't need me to tell you the importance of education to Palestinians. And similar in Ireland, as a post-colonial society, that was very poor for a very long time, we have very high education rates. So we need to be very open and understanding of the impact of AI. A lot of people, when they talk to you about AI, will talk to you about, I think, feelings, emotions, hopes, and marketing, right? Whereas what I'm going to talk to you about is based on research. And it's based on the latest research on artificial intelligence and what it does both in terms of communicating information to learners and the impact it has on the learning process. Okay, so what I'm going to talk to you about isn't things that I wish and I hope, but it's based on academic research. That is very important because very few people talk about the research. So I've broken this talk into 3 parts. The first part is, how does AI work? I think we first of all have to understand how it works to understand its impact. Then I want to talk about some very important research that has been done on AI that is linked to academia. And then I also want to share what are some good AI tools for academia that are actually helpful, right? That are actually helpful and going to help you out with research, with essays, with academia. Okay, what's actually good here? Okay, so those are the 3 sections. And as I say, I want to start off with a background on AI and how it works. Okay, so AI, the term AI, artificial intelligence, goes all the way back to the 1950s. And it started off as a marketing term, in fact, to get people interested in the idea that machines could do the thinking for humans. But for a long time, nothing happened. It was very unsuccessful until the 2010s. What happened in the 2010s to make AI actually possible? The answer is the internet. Suddenly, thanks to the internet, we had a lot of data. There was an explosion of digital data from social media, from online behavior, from sensors, and this allowed AI models to be trained on huge data sets. And this was a requirement for AI. The other requirement was that they managed to figure out that they needed to use graphics processing units originally used in video games to train these large models, okay? So in the 2010s, you had this explosion of AI because of 2 things. Really the internet, which gave us big data, and the repurposing of computer chips for video games to create these AI neural networks, okay? And so we started to see AI in the 2010s, but it wasn't labeled AI. So you'll have seen tools like Google Translate, voice assistants like Apple Siri, Amazon Alexas, and content recommendations on, say, YouTube, Netflix, Facebook. The watch this next content recommendation, these were kind of early forms of AI as we understand it today, but it wasn't called AI, okay? Then we get into the 2020s and we see generative AI and mass adoption. So in the 2020s, we saw tools like ChatGPT become widely accessible, giving us realistic, human-like conversations, content generation, and what appeared, but wasn't, in fact, and I'll get into that, to be problem solving. ChatGPT was a huge game changer because it hit 100 million users within 2 months of its launch, the fastest growing app in the history of all time. So suddenly we went from Google Translate and video recommendations to large language models, LLMs like ChatGPT, like Google Gemini. We also had image generation like DALL-E and Midjourney that could create videos. And these went mainstream. Suddenly AI just wasn't for coders or scientists. It was for writers, students, artists, marketeers, activists, etc. Right? It went mainstream. Okay, so how does it actually work? And I'm going to use the example in the time we have available. You know, we could do an entire conference on this. I'm going to use ChatGPT as an example, as it is the most widely adopted AI tool, okay? Let's use ChatGPT to understand how AI works. And there's help in the name, okay? So chat, it's a chatbot that helps us, but the detail is in the GPT. And if we go through these one by one, we can understand much more about how AI operates, okay? So the G stands for generative. And that simply is telling us that ChatGPT, the AI, creates something that's brand new, okay? It's generating something that's brand new. And that's important because the AI in the 2010s or early AI didn't necessarily create something new. Spell check, for example, is an early example of AI that didn't create something new, it just corrected a word, right? Didn't create a new word. But ChatGPT creates new words one at a time, okay, by drawing on what it's learned from learning patterns, okay? So the G is generative. You're getting something new. The P, this is really important, we're going to get into this a little bit more, is for pre-trained. So before it can generate, before it can do the G, it has to have already been trained on vast amounts of data, text, learning, grammar, phrases, facts, and styles, okay? And we're talking vast amounts, okay? So the P, the pre-trained, is really important. You need to have trained it. And the T stands for transformer. This is the underlying mechanism of how AI works. It's a multi-layer network that uses what is called self-attention, okay? To explain that really simply, what AI couldn't do before was it couldn't look at entire sentences. It just looked at individual words in sentences. The T, the transformer, allows it to look at entire sentences. And this is really important for understanding context. The transformer allows it to understand how every word in a sentence relates to each other. This allows it to process language more efficiently. And this allows it to seem like it's giving us human conversation. This makes the conversation feel like you're talking to a human. So the G, the P, and the T are really important. Generative, you're getting something new. The P, it's based on what it's pre-trained on. And T is the transformer, the mechanism. It looks at the entire sentence. And this is so important for giving us an output that feels human, that feels like a conversation. And that's ChatGPT. And this, for all intents and purposes, is a really good idea of how all AI works. And we can learn some really important points from this. The first of all is that GPT generates by prediction on what comes next. This is so important. AI is prediction. It's not understanding. It doesn't understand like human does. It predicts based on its pre-trained data. Many people, and I'm talking 99% of people, make the mistake that thinks that ChatGPT and other AI have human-like reasoning. They absolutely do not. They are prediction machines, okay? Second really important point. Its output, i.e. what it predicts, is entirely dependent on what it is trained on by humans, okay? It's really important to know that ultimately at the top of all this, there is a human deciding what the AI model is trained on, okay? So ultimately, this is a very human tool. And the data set, the training set, is everything for how this AI operates, okay? So when you see really creative or content-aware phrasing, really human phrasing come out of AI, or images, whatever it might be, it is still the result of prediction guided by what GPT is trained on, okay? A lot of people think they're having real-life conversations with AI. They are not, right? No matter how real it feels, it is all just a prediction, okay? It is artificial language. If you know that, you know more than 99% of people do about AI. Also, and I reiterate this really again, is so important, this is human, okay? Humans train the machine, and what they input into it reflects their ideology, their political beliefs, their ideas about how the world should work. And we have three really important people when it comes to training AI machines. We have people like Elon Musk, Sam Altman, Peter Thiel, okay? These people are famous in Silicon Valley. They're extremely rich. They're extremely wealthy. And they have an ideology that goes into these machines. And that's very important to know. These are ultimately the people in control of the machines. So we must be very cautious about understanding what they are training the machines on and the outputs of that, okay? I want to talk about some papers now, some research papers on AI. And again, this helps us understand the opportunities, but also the limitations and risks of AI in academia. The first one I want to talk about is maybe the most famous paper on artificial intelligence, okay? Going back to 2021, it's got a bit of a funny name. It's called On the Dangers of Stochastic Parrots, okay? And it was created by safety AI leaders at Google, okay? And they created this paper because they were very worried about the dangers of AI and LLMs not being taken into account when these big companies are releasing their AI, okay? And this has lots of implications for academia. So what did this research paper, as I say, written by the top AI safety professionals in the world, okay, say? They outlined 5 key risks of AI. The first one was that, and I've talked about this already, but it's worth reiterating, is the lack of understanding. AI predicts words based on patterns, but it doesn't understand them. It generates fluent but incorrect or harmful text. And crucially, there's no way to hold AI responsible for mistakes, okay? So if we think about what this means, for example, for education and academia, if we have a lot of professors and we have a lot of students creating essays or content using AI, it's very important to realize that this level of understanding is very low. It's extremely low because it's just predictive text. And so much of academia is about deep understanding, deep research, okay? Lack of understanding, very important to know. The second of all is what this paper pointed out is the bias in AI. As I said, AI is only as good as what it is trained on. And what mostly AI is trained on is the internet, okay? It's the internet. So it learns from the internet, and the internet is full of bias, full of discrimination. And this creates large AI machines that have race bias, gender bias, disability bias. And we've seen the impacts of this on AI tools. AI tools from the biggest companies. So for example, Amazon brought out an AI platform for hiring people for companies, right? So you can imagine if you work at Amazon and you get 1,000 people applying for a job, Amazon said, we don't want to have to read through all those CVs. They put out an AI machine to read them all. And they had to stop the AI machine because what it was doing was that it was biased against women. It was biased against people that were non-Western. Because it was trained on the internet, the AI was biased towards hiring Western white men. And so they had to stop the machine. So AI bias is really important because these large language models and other AI are trained on the internet, which itself is biased, okay? Now, ChatGPT used to actually have a warning on its front page when you went to use ChatGPT, and I quote, this used to be the warning, may produce harmful instructions or biased content. That warning is now gone, but that biased content is still there. So again, we have to think about how this could impact academia. If you're asking AI, tell me about the 5 most influential philosophers, or tell me about the 10 most influential scientists, it's going to be biased, and it will give you biased outputs based on its training data, okay? So this is very important to know, the bias in AI because of the training data. The third, and maybe the most well-known risk from AI is misinformation or hallucinations. AI can create false or misleading information that seems real. This can be used to spread fake news, scams, misinformation, and there's no built-in fact checking to stop mistakes. Why does it do this on a huge level? I mean, studies have shown that about 40% of what ChatGPT generates is just completely false or wrong. It's huge amounts, right? Okay. Why does it do this? And this goes back to the fact that, again, it's a prediction machine, right? It is just predicting the next word in a chain based on the context the transformer provides, okay? It doesn't understand. It is just trying to tell you what it thinks you want to hear in an order it thinks sounds human, okay? That's why it creates so much information that is incorrect. In academia, the impacts of this are, I see it in my students, completely false answers. They might sound credible because the language is credible, but it's events in history that have never happened. Laws that do not exist. The list is endless, okay? One good example is the amount of fake academic sources that now my students give me as part of essays. The sources sound real. They have real links. They have real sounding titles and authors. But when you go to click on those links or find them, they do not exist. This is because the AI is trained on real sources and tries to imitate them, but fails. But it thinks it's giving you what it wants. Another famous example right now is that a lot of law firms and lawsuits are using fake citations and fake law cases all the way up to the American Supreme Court, all the way up to the top law courts in America. The judges are looking at the AI citations and finding they are complete fabrications and hallucinations in some major cases currently take place now. And in fact, there's a website you can visit, which is called AI hallucination cases, which details in just like a month, there was 100 hallucinations that lawyers had tried to put through the courts in America, okay? So this information is a big problem, but we should expect it because, again, it is about predictions, okay? It is not about facts. Number 4, again, we're still talking about this paper that these Google safety scientists talked about, right? So their number 4 big risk we all have to know is the environmental cost of AI, okay? Training AI models uses huge amounts of energy, huge amounts of energy. This creates massive amounts of pollution. Carbon emissions driving climate change, but also pollution from the gas turbines that need to power the energy to power the AI models, right? And you get some very dangerous gases out of these models. And usually these AI training data centers are set up in poor, impoverished communities that struggle to fight back, all right? So for example, Elon Musk's latest XAI systems. No, I'm not sharing anything. No, I'm just talking. I hope that's okay. Hope that's okay. AI training models are put in predominantly poor Black communities in the United States because of the amount of pollution they create, right? And in my own country here in Ireland, where I live in Dublin, half of our electricity grid goes to AI data centers. It's absolutely extraordinary the amount of energy and water that they need. Just one large data center can have the energy and water needs of a small city. So in the middle of a climate crisis, in a water crisis, these data centers to train AI are using huge amounts of energy and water we do not have, okay? Very important. And they're taking it from marginalized, poor, and already impoverished communities that struggle to fight back, okay? Because they have limited resources. And then finally, they point out the human cost, okay? We think of AI as being very computer-based, but there's a lot of human work that goes into AI. So much of that data that goes into AI machines needs to be tagged, needs to be ordered, and that needs to be done by humans, okay? AI can't do that. It's done by humans, and it's done predominantly by humans. The big companies outsource this to humans like in Kenya, in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, where people are tagging information at the lowest possible wages for the most possible time in very poor working conditions, okay? These are modern slavery conditions that the AI companies do not talk about. They also use copyrighted material, like movies, and this is one of the things they're being sued for, the use of copyrighted movies. But also, and this is something that you may or may not be aware of in Gaza, the AI use of mass surveillance in drones, in weapons targeting, for targeting specific ethnic or social groups, and we've seen this used in Gaza by the Israeli occupation army. There's a real human cost and human risk here as well for malpractice, huge malpractice usage. Okay, so this is the most cited paper on AI, and this is what it was talking about, right? So very important implications for how we use it in academia. Okay, there's a couple of other papers very recently released just in the last couple of weeks that have created big sensations, okay, in AI. AI communities, very important for academia too. One of those papers is called "Why Our Brains Need Knowledge in the Age of AI." Okay, so this study, released just in May by the University of Oakland, talked about how we learn as human beings, right? How we learn as human beings and the impact of AI on our learning. These researchers told us, we should already kind of know, but that memorizing core facts like how to do math, vocabulary, helps us think more clearly and creatively later. We need to pre-train our own brains to think deeply, to think creatively. And if we use AI for that, we lose that ability to be critical thinkers, right? If we always use calculators to do math, then we don't know how to do the math anymore. We literally lose the memory networks that we need for deep learning, okay? So this paper was very clear that we need to use AI to support learning, not replace it. Technology in classrooms needs to help people learn, but it can't stop them from thinking, because then we lose that ability, okay? So that's very important for academia and choosing what AI tools we use in academia. So that paper came out in May. There's another paper that just came out like a week ago from MIT, obviously one of the most renowned universities in the world. And this paper was called "Your Brain on ChatGPT." Bit of a fancy title here: Accumulation of Cognitive Debt When Using an AI Assistant for Writing an Essay. Okay, so what did these researchers do? They asked 54 students to write multiple essays using ChatGPT, a Google search engine, or nothing at all. Okay, 3 ways of doing it: AI, search engine, or nothing at all. And they hooked these students up to an EEG machine to read their brains, to read their brain activity. And they found that out of the 3 groups, ChatGPT users had the lowest brain engagement. And they, quote, constantly underperformed at neuro, linguistic, and at behavioral levels. Okay, really bad across the board. Okay, and they looked at it over 7 months. And in fact, ChatGPT users got worse. They got lazier, their brains did less. Each essay, their brains got weaker and weaker and weaker, until by the end of it, they weren't able to do any critical analysis on the papers they were submitting. All they could do was copy and paste. So this is a really important paper for academia and learning that really suggests that the usage of AI really harms the learning process, the critical thinking process, and makes your brain not perform, really fail to perform. Okay, so these 3 papers I've mentioned highlight risks, but they highlight how our brains work on AI, but also highlight that if we're going to use AI tools, it's really important to choose AI tools that support learning, do not replace it. Okay. Okay. So you're probably thinking, okay, so tell me some tools that actually support learning, do not replace it, right? So as I'm a lecturer at TU Dublin, this is exactly what I tell my students, okay? I will forbid them from using generative AI to do essays for the reasons that you've just heard. It hinders critical thinking, and in fact, they get stupider over time and lose the ability to do critical thinking, okay? So what are some of these tools that I'll actually recommend to them, okay? I'll give you 3, okay? One is called, very simply, Anki flashcards. This is a flashcards tool based on AI that helps people memorize, that helps people to learn, not the opposite. it trains their brain, okay, to do more memorization, to build up more neural networks in their own brain so that they can do critical thinking. So Anki flashcards is one I will recommend to them to help build their neural networks on learning. The second one is called Litmaps, Litmaps. And this is very helpful to help with searching for papers. So if you have a research paper that you really like and you think it's great, I'll put them in the chat. I'll put them in the chat, the names in the chat. If you think it's great, you can go to Litmaps, plug in the name of that paper, and you'll see other papers that the authors wrote. You'll see it compared to citations and over time. So this is a time saver, right? It's not taken away from your thinking. It's bringing you quicker to see what other papers are very effective and influential in this area for you to read, okay? And this is the really important part. Don't put the papers in ChatGPT and say summarize, because study after study has shown that they do not summarize well and they make things up. They hallucinate. You got to read the papers yourself, but tools like Litmaps will help you get to those papers quicker and cut out a lot of time, right? And the third one, very popular now, is called Thesify, okay, Thesify. So what this does is, again, it doesn't replace your learning, it helps it. You can put in an essay or a thesis into Thesify, and what it will do is that it will tell you, it will critically analyze your essay for you and tell you how to improve it, okay? You have to do the improving. Let's be clear, you have to do the improving, and this is why it's good, but it will tell you, hey, your introduction or your abstract is lacking these 3 key features. You know, you don't have a conclusion, your methodology is a bit off in these ways, and that will allow you to go and make it better, okay? So these are just examples of 3 tools that help your learning, that support your learning, okay? And I would say I'll just put them in the chat when I finish talking, okay? So you can access them. It's really critical to understand that one of the way AI is going for a lot of academia and institutions is that people are writing content using AI, and then the students are getting that content from the learners and again putting it through AI to summarize it and try and learn it, okay? So we've got 2 processes there that is ripe for misinformation, that is ripe for hallucinations, and is ripe for bias, okay? When the thing that we need to prioritize is critical thinking, okay? We need critical thinking. We need to do the work. You know, the critical thinking, it takes time. It's hard. But that is what builds up the neural networks in your brain required for you to do deep learning. If we cede it to a machine, then we don't know what we're doing anymore. And I think this is a big opportunity for academia in Palestine, right? And academia in general in the global south, right? I fear in the global north that we are being overrun by AI, right? And this is going to seriously hinder our learning. So I would absolutely appeal to Palestinian academics, Palestinian students, don't lose what's made you so great, right? That dedication to academia, to degrees, to deep research and learning, okay? Keep what you've got, what makes you so fantastic. Don't fall into the trap of replacing your thinking with AI, like so many Western academic institutions are doing. Keep doing what you're doing, but do use some AI tools that can help you get there faster. The key thing is, though, as I say, don't replace your own brain. I think that is absolutely fundamental, okay? Don't replace your own brain. Look, that was about half an hour. I always like to leave some time for questions. I'm going to put the name of those tools I kind of mentioned in the chat. And as I'd say, yeah, I see in the chat, Notebook LLM is a great tool to write essays with the help of sources. It can be. I'm always very keen that people write essays themselves, because the process of writing is you learning. The process of writing is you training your brain and thinking critically. Don't lose that key step, okay? And that is what is going to differentiate you from other academics, from other students, other professors in the rest of the world who are going to fall into this AI trap of replacing their thinking with AI thinking that is biased, that hallucinates, that is very poor. Okay, cool. I hope that was interesting, and love to hear any questions you may have.
Wow, this was really interesting and intriguing. It really raises a lot of questions and comments, I'm sure. But I really liked what you ended up with. You finished your talk with, Ciarán. You said, and this is something to take away with you, but don't lose what made you great. That is dedication to academia and qualification. This really summarizes the whole story. It's kind of a quote that we can take away with us today. So thank you, Ciarán. That was really great. I learned so much. And that particular study on the brain at MIT, that was really informative. And I think it raises a lot of questions on how students and academics around the world use AI. I like what you said when you talked about supporting, not replacing learning, which is great. And I understand that the resources that you suggested hopefully will support learning, not replace learning. And I encourage everyone from our students who are joining us and who will be watching this talk later on in the recording, please explore those sources and see how they can support your learning and help you. We received so many assignments and homework, and we see that it is clearly written by AI, which is really demotivating. So please don't lose what made you great, guys. Keep on dedicated and determined. Thank you so much, Ciarán. Any questions or comments, please?
I see a question from Elena.
Here's a question.
L2 speakers, individuals who speak a language in addition to their first critical thinking skills from the start. Do you mean, Elena, that they struggle to think critically in the second language? Is that what you mean, or?
I'll mute myself. Well, partially, yes. It depends on the level of their language skills, but the main part probably is the way they're taught in their country. So they are actually using rote memory learning, to memorize facts and just kind of prepare for the test rather than, think critically and question what they see and read.
Yeah, I completely understand. And I think no easy answer to that other than, the teaching processes and the pedagogy used. I certainly, we are trained to, yes, we have to build up the knowledge, but then we move on to assignments where they have to think critically, build up the neural networks of knowledge in the head. And then once they have that, then challenge them to think critically. And you're right. Some teaching frameworks or cultures need to do that. But AI tools can support either of those. But as I say, kind of not replace them. I don't think there's an easy answer to that other than those kind of teaching cultures and teaching pedagogies need to make sure that they're building up knowledge, then asking the students to critically analyze. And you can do that with or without AI.
Thank you.
What is the ethical implication of AI in daily life? That is a great question. Okay. It's the $1 million question. The ethical implications are, absolutely massive. What I think is really important is that we need ethical AI tools and ethical AI use. And that is something that's really badly lacking at the moment, really badly lacking. The only sort of legislation I can point to is the EU ethical directive on AI, right? And the key provision of that is that AI can't be used to replace a human decision maker, okay? AI can't be used to replace a human decision maker. And that's really important because we see, for example, in the United States, they are trying to create one massive AI system for the entire government that will decide everything from, your residency rights, your educational rights, your human rights, whether you can get food aid, food support, where you can be rescued from a hurricane or not. It'll track your political beliefs, your ethnicity. This is hugely ethically compromised, okay? In the EU, we do have the AI ethics directive that has this decision that humans must be in some part of the decision-making tree. And I'd say that's an absolute minimum, okay? Human need to make the decisions ultimately. That is not to say, of course, that humans don't make biased or ethically unsound decisions. They absolutely do. But at the very least, we need that human accountability. What else we need to do, for example, in countries like my own, where we're giving lots of water, energy, electricity to AI companies and not giving it to the poor communities and jacking up their prices, is that we really need to decide, what do we want to use AI for, okay? We only have limited resources, limited electricity, limited water. We can't be using AI for creating things we don't need. We need to use AI for the things we need it for, okay? This could be things to help in medicine, help in research, help positively in education, but to create nonsense videos for YouTube or misinformation or music that no one wants to listen to and take up huge amounts of energy, this should be forbidden, this should be outlawed. So, and the third thing to answer your question is that we need ethical laws and rules at a governance level, at a country level, and at a global level, okay? We can all decide, and it's the right thing to do, to live our own ethical lives, and we should. But to get the change required and to put the laws on AI that we need governments. We need big, right ethical rules embedded in our societies. And that's something we're definitely going to need. America is doing everything it can to prevent that. In one of Donald Trump's latest bills and laws, they tried to make it so that you couldn't create any AI regulation for the next 10 years, believe it or not. They're trying to pass that through Congress. We need laws, we need regulation on a massive scale. I hope that answers your question. That was a bit long.
Thank you. Ruba, you had a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for this amazing meeting. And my question is, why do we call it AI, since it's just a language model that selects the most, the most repeated answers of the users of the AI, and doesn't do the thinking or reasoning, but only predict?
I love that question. That is one of the smartest questions, right? I'll tell you the answer why it's called artificial AI. Is marketing. All the way back in 1957, a group of academics wanted to get together and hold a conference on the most basic computers, right, that had been started to develop following the Second World War, okay? And to attract people to that conference, the title of it was a conference on artificial intelligence. It was marketing. They had no artificial intelligence whatsoever. They just liked the sound of it to attract people to sign up to the conference. And the title has stuck ever since. That is the answer to the question why it's called artificial intelligence. So even though it is a prediction machine, we call it AI because of guys who a long time ago wanted to sell tickets to a conference. Yeah, that is the answer. Prediction machine would have been a lot better a word, or as that paper called it, a parrot. It's a trained parrot. That first paper I talked about was basically calling AI trained parrot. And that's what it is. It's a trained parrot. And that's a good way of thinking about it, right? Would you ask a trained parrot to write an essay for you? No. AI is a trained parrot. That's a great question. Artificial intelligence, just as a name, is the wrong name. Thanks for that question. A great question.
Thanks, Robert. I think this is a smart question, as you said, Ciarán, because it comes from one of the smartest students we have in the department. That's why. So thanks, Robert, for this smart question. I have a question, if you don't mind, Ciarán. Now, when it comes to detecting AI-generated content, of course, we as educators, we know if it is written by a human or by a machine. We use our sense, we use our experience in reading the text and how it reads, the flow of the text, the words used and also that whether it yaps or parrots, as you said, or not. But do you have any other like ways that educators and academics can use to detect AI generated content other than turn it in, of course?
Yes, detection is very hard. What I try and do is create assessments that makes using AI extremely difficult, right? So I'll often ask students to critically think about a recent world event, okay? That means that the AI models are not trained on it. It means that they're not trained on it. So any answer they give is completely rubbish. So that is kind of my key way is I'll use a world event, something that's happened extremely recently, no AI model will be trained on, so the AI is useless. Another way of doing it is, to hold in-person presentations, to hold in-person questions and answers, in-person debates. For a long time in Ireland, the written exam was seen as very old-fashioned. But now the written exam under exam conditions in exam hall is back, because it's just you and a pen, and a pencil. That's come surging back. And in fact, just a couple of years ago, Ireland brought in a lot of take-home assessments due at home. And now we're reversing all of it to go back to the old-fashioned exam. So there's nothing which is like foolproof on AI detection. Again, study after study has shown that AI trying to detect AI doesn't work. There's so many false positives. So what we try and do is create assessments which AI performs extremely poorly in, that the students go, I can't use it. It'll be rubbish.
Yeah, fair enough, and sounds practical. I think we've got a question. Dr. Yahya says, do you think overuse of AI is ruining everything?
I think it's ruining the internet, right? I mean, from my very privileged place here, using the internet has gotten a lot worse. When I try and do Google search, I get a bunch of AI answers. When I go Google image, I get a bunch of AI generated image. It's awful, right? And then the AI is retraining itself on this AI goop content, right? So it's definitely ruining the internet. To answer your question, I think the societies that restrict AI to where it actually helps and not just a free-for-all will benefit hugely, right? The societies that say, I don't want AI slop, I don't want misinformation, I'm going to use AI just to, in medical research, I'm going to use AI to help build sustainable cities, to help plan out complex, more sustainable supply chains. And I'm not going to allow people just to use it for whatever they want to use it for, right? I think those societies will be the healthiest, more sustainable societies, okay? I do think there is a real risk, particularly in Western societies. I mean, I think there's a huge risk in what America is doing with AI, that they are going to really struggle for society cohesiveness, where everyone has access to create misinformation, where everyone has access to create really realistic videos of fake news. I really worry for the cohesiveness of those societies. And I think societies that minimize AI and still rely on face-to-face, rely on community, rely on learning from each other are going to be the healthiest and happiest societies of the 21st century.
Ala, you have a question? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you for this meeting. I joined late, so I'm not sure about my question, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. As a human, what do you think that how can humans and AI best collaborate rather than compete in this time? And my other question as a student, what skills should students focus on to stay relevant in an AI-driven future?
Sure. To answer your first question, and I hope this is the answer you're looking for, AI is most effective, right, for specific tasks, okay? Very specific tasks. Do not train your AI on everything on the internet. And that is how AI is currently trained, right? But if you decide, I want to detect, say, cancer cells in humans, right? And you train it exclusively on cancer cell treatments, right? Study after study, Of course, the data has to be done right, the permissions have to be done right. But if you train it exclusively to do one function, it can perform well, right? That can be helpful. And that is a good use of AI to assist a human expert and decision maker, right? You should never use AI for a task that you yourself are not an expert in, because you need to know when the AI is wrong, okay? So it can be very good for specific tasks for assisting humans who themselves are experts. So that's when we can use AI, right? Training it on the internet is a disaster. And to answer your second question, how do you stay up with it? I think, first of all, the first thing anyone needs to know to stay up with AI is how it works. You folks now have a good idea of that. You need to know the risks. And I would absolutely stay up to date with the latest research from people who are doing research into how AI actually works, because there's so much hype. The AI hype cycle is absolutely huge. So there are good researchers, like the kind of papers I've mentioned, researchers who are doing really good research on how AI works, where it works well and where it doesn't work well. Stay up with those researchers, and you will be in the top 0.1% of people who know about AI and its risks and where it does work, okay? It's very important to note that for people like ChatGPT and OpenAI and Google and Microsoft, they have invested hundreds, and I mean hundreds of billions of dollars into generating these AI machines, okay? And they want to make profit. They want a return. They don't want a return in 10 or 20 years. They want a return in 2 or 3 years, okay? So their AI hype machine is doing everything it can to push it to as many people as possible. It's like a tidal wave, and it's subsuming business, it's subsuming academia, and we need to know the risks, and we need to be able to know their motives and push back on that and say, is this actually good for me? Or are they just trying to sell me something because they need to make $400 billion in 2 years really fast, okay? So to stay ahead of the game, know the motives, know how it works, and crucially, keep up to date with the latest research being done by AI safety researchers, and you'll be ahead of the game.
Yeah, a lot of money has been really invested there.
Huge. And money in Silicon Valley seeks a return, and we have to be aware of that. That is the primary motive for these big companies. It's a return on their investment. And they don't want to wait. They want the return now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ruba, you have another question?
So first, before I ask the question, I just have a thought, which is, since the thing is for free, then you are the product. And I think this works the best to describe AI. My question is, I have a friend that is a developer, and lately he's been working on the humanizing answers. So, which is basically gives you a human-like answers, and I've seen it, and it's hard to distinguish between the real, like, human answers, if it's like human answer or just like AI. And so as doctors and teachers, how you think like we can overcome this problem?
Great question. How I overcome it is, I say, thank you very much for your submission. Please come into class and explain it to me, okay? If the student has actually understood it and done it themselves and critically thought about it, they'll have no problem doing that, right? They'll have no problem. But if they've trusted an AI to generate it, they'll have big problems doing that, big problems. There's a great reason why, sorry, this is a bit obtuse, but, in the European Renaissance, most academics, when they were writing papers or writing a study, wrote it as a conversation, right? They wrote it as a conversation because the human mind, when it converses with others and has conversations, that's when it does some of its most powerful thinking. When we talk to others, and some of its best critical reading, when we have discussions, arguments, debates. So if you come ask a student to say, very interested in your paper, let's discuss and critique it together, you'll very quickly find out whether they actually understand it themselves, no matter how humanized the language is.
Yeah, this is fair enough, especially when you know the level of the student and Of course, the writing reflects a high level of complexity, and of course, it raises a question. So it's a good approach to ask a student to discuss, which is kind of a defense of their product. It's fair.
Again, we're going back to the classics a little bit. You know, the classic thesis defense or essay defense is simply to ask the students, hey, do you know what you wrote? You know, like, so yeah, like going back to the old written exam with a pencil, you know, it's absolute evidencing what the student actually understands.
Yeah. And one of the participants here, my friend, Dr. Alina, the other day shared an incident, I think, when a student used a native language. He was an international student in New Zealand, and he shared a piece where he used the native language, Maori, in his writing or her writing. So it was, how come? How did you know Maori? So it was tricky. If you would like to share about it, Lynn, I don't know if it was detected by AI or you just found about it.
Sorry, Dr. Ahmed, you were breaking up. I couldn't hear. What case were you referring to?
I was referring to that assignment that you posted on Facebook. The student was using Maori, his or her assignment, and it was an international student.
Yes, no, I guess well, I didn't suspect any AI usage there. Students just use Maori and English interchangeably, and it is acceptable in assignments, especially in our health department. So yeah, it was just interesting to read, and you know, comparing it, for example, to Red Indian somewhere in America, you wouldn't see that anywhere in the world, I guess.
Yeah,
another important point, sorry, apologies for jumping. Another important point to go back to the last student's question, I just want to say about the you are the product. That's a very, very important point, okay? You are the product. So sharing any personal information with the product now knows it, okay? So for example, if you're sharing it with ChatGPT also is Microsoft, by the way. So if you're sharing it with Microsoft, if you're sharing it with Google, Gemini, Anthropic, they then have that information forever, okay? They have that data on you forever. So it's just be very careful when sharing information with any of these AI tools, okay? Because once you share it, it's theirs.
Any last comment or question before we wrap up and finish?
Thanks, Ruba.
Thanks, Ruba. Okay, so if you don't have any questions, any comments, let's call it a day and stop here. And as I said, I'll be sharing the recording afterwards in the group. So if you missed any part of the talk, please go back and revisit it. And thank you so much, Ciarán, for your time and effort. This is really wonderful. This is really fantastic effort.
And my pleasure. It was great to join you all. And, you know, academia collaborations between Palestine and Ireland are extremely important. And we need to keep that extremely strong because the connection between Irish people and Palestinian people is extremely strong.
I agree. That's right. And we look forward to having you in the near future.
I cannot wait. I'll be there. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for your time and effort, and stay safe. Bye-bye.